right, we have more on the Rasheem Carter case. Here's a take on the Isaiah factor. And it has the word fact in there, so I don't know if they're making a big deal out of the word fact, but if so, you know my rule. If they have truth and reals and fact in their title, it's probably a whole bunch of propaganda. And in this case, that is exactly what we're going to get. Hello out there. I am trying to get through.
With his powerful brainwaves cradled in the warmth of reasoning, it's time for Johnny Walker Dredd to straighten you out on a thing or two. Emanating all the way from exciting Las Vegas, Oklahoma, it's the Johnny Walker Dredd Show.
And welcome to The Factor Uncensored. A murder in Mississippi is now on the radar of federal investigators. This comes as an autopsy of the victim, Rasheem Carter, revealed he was beheaded.
A couple of things here. First, there's no bones about it. He just says there's been a murder taking place. Forget the investigation. Forget any need to collect facts or anything like that. No, it's just a murder. And notice he also said beheaded, which has a very strong connotation of execution. However, most likely it was animals who tore the body apart.
Beheaded. The 25-year-old was last seen alive in October. Now, parts of his body were found in the woods a month later, and another haunting detail. His family says Carter went to the local police department and reported being scared for his life. He believed a group of white men were following him. My next guest has been intimately involved in this case. Joining me now, Ben Crump, law investigator, author Silky Slim Reed. It's just my
Ben Crump, investigator? Oh no. Put your boots on, everybody. It's going to get deep here.
Mind-blowing to see this kind of case happening, Arthur. And it's my understanding he last talked to his mother on the phone October 1st, and he warned her. He was saying that there were some issues with his employer, right?
Yes, with his employer, and then he said that 3 trucks of white men had started following him, and then he texted his mom saying that if anything happened to me, so-and-so has something to do with it. He have these men trying to kill me. And then he was also caught on a deer camera in the woods with a large stick on his shoulder, and his shirt was ripped off of him.
Okay, so just quickly here, what we have heard about the employer and all that comes from his mother. Now, she supposedly read a text from him in front of a microphone, so there's probably little reason to believe that she made that up. However, I don't believe the story about the guys in trucks. 3 truckloads of white guys chasing after him seems a bit hard to believe, but who knows? However, she may have fabricated that one to raise interest in her son's story.
And he had bruises on him, so someone was after him and someone was chasing him.
It sounds like a hunt.
Yes.
They're hunting him.
They're hunting him, that's right. And
all that from just a single photograph of him out in the woods with no shirt on.
He was seen on that deer camera, and that photo that was on that deer camera, even though they knew he was missing, was circulated through the town at a truck stop during breakfast time, and people were talking about it. And finally, we found out that he was hunted by someone, and you don't just make accusations about someone's trying to kill you and then come up dead.
Yeah, but we don't have any proof that he made any of those accusations. Again, his mother claimed that he did.
What's crazy about it is that the sheriff on the first day ruled out foul play. We don't see any foul play.
That's not what he said. And this is one of the big lies that they're spreading. And it's very hurtful. I mean, you're basically claiming that the police ruled out murder. They did not rule out murder. They said they had no evidence of it. And they even said that everything was still on the table. They were still investigating. But these guys keep saying this. Why? Because they're trying to drum up racial hatred. And this is the kind of thing that can get an officer hurt. They need to quit this crap and quote the police department accurately.
When his head was detached from his spinal cord.
How does that happen?
I don't know, man.
It's not hard at all. Once the animals tear away all the flesh around the actual spine, the head doesn't come off that hard. I mean, wolves will tear the hell out of a body. And these guys know it. Both of these men know very well that animals could have accounted for this, but they also know that a large number of their audience doesn't. And so they're going to play to the crowd. They're going to whip this thing up. The fact that the body was dismembered is going to be played by them as proof that he was murdered because they want to get that audience of theirs rallied. They know deep down that animals probably were to blame for the dismemberment of the body. That doesn't mean that he died of natural causes. He still could have been murdered.
It's Mississippi Burning 2023. And we're on top of this 24/7. We haven't rested on this case. And think about this, that we've had this case since December, right after the remains were found in November, and couldn't get a news story broke on it. Only a couple of people would show up. Only a couple of cameras would show up. So we couldn't get the story broke until now, once we had the images of the remains. And what the state was actually telling us is we're conducting an autopsy, so we're going to turn the body over to y'all as soon as we get through. So when they call and say that they were turning over the body, when I went to Mississippi and it was the size of a shoebox, I was like, what kind of sick joke is this?
Wow. And we're looking at exclusive pictures you've provided for us here. What are we looking at, Arthur, right now exactly?
That's the vertebrae, parts of the vertebrae. The other picture that you see, that's the skull that was inside of that box that I'm telling you about, and that is his skull. And we've never seen this type of decomposition on anybody, so we're trying to figure all of this out as we go along. Was any kind of substance used? What has him in the shape that he's at? Because it would actually take, we dig up mummies and there's still skin, there's hair. We don't have.
That's because they were mummified, Mr. Brilliant Investigator.
That's a question I had for my producer. I'm like, how can you have a skull in that amount of time? And of course, this has been examined by the pathologist, the medical examiner,
And by the way, there's nothing to stop the medical examiner from cleaning up the skull once they do their examination. In fact, it may have been a part of it. There's no evidence to suggest that the skull arrived in this shape. And in fact, the family stated at one point that the human remains were covered with a real sticky substance, which is probably rotting flesh. I don't know. But just because this is what we see does not mean that this is what the medical examiner saw. And I'm pretty sure that the skull wasn't cut in half like that when it arrived at the ME's office.
They've positively identified him as this.
That's why some of the teeth were missing, because they used the root of the teeth to take DNA and match it to his mom's DNA. So it's positively him, no doubt.
He probably regrets saying that one. Well, what do you mean? You mean that the teeth were pulled out as part of a natural investigation? No, that means he was murdered. He's probably walking back that one. Oops. If not, I'll give him credit. At least he told the truth about the teeth, unlike Ben Crump, who's his employer.
About that now, also what happened is that last week, a whole separate set of remains have been found on another piece of property.
Separate individual?
Well, we're thinking that it's his remains, but they haven't done the DNA yet. It looked like with a case that, because we hadn't had the publicity that we had now, looked like they would have jumped right on it to try to find out if this was other parts of his remains. But as of today, they say that they haven't tested it for DNA yet.
Wow, just incredible, just unbelievable. So,
in other words, they're being far more careful because you guys have a tendency to spread lies about results. And that's why I say, once Ben Crump and his team get involved, the truth just goes out the window, and you have to tread very carefully at that point. Everything you say is going to be taken out of context or just simply lied about.
Child. And
reminds us of Emmett Till's mother.
Exactly. It reminds you exactly of the same story. The way this young man was lynched, no doubt about it in our mind, he was lynched. I don't care what kind of stories they concoct, he was lynched.
I don't care what kind of evidence comes up. He was lynched. That's what he's actually saying.
And we see the results of that by what we have in the shoebox.
In the last 30 seconds that we have, what is it like for you as an investigator for Ben Crump and an investigator in general to hear a black man has been decapitated?
For me, it wasn't about being an investigator. It wasn't about working for Crump Law Firm. It was about a father. I got a 25-year-old.
Yeah, and this is what we call bias. Okay, as an investigator, you're supposed to shed that and look at the thing from a rational, objective standpoint. So I get it. Yeah, you have a lot of emotional attachment to this, especially a strong emotional attachment to make sure that white people pay for this somehow. I get that. But you're supposed to step away from that while you're investigating.
And I was like, I'll be damned if I didn't do everything and turn over every leaf that I could turn over to find out what happened to my son. So I took this as my son, and I sleep with that every night. I was tossing and turning, and now I'm starting to ease up a little bit because we're coming closer to actually finding out. We got people on the internet that's talking. We got people that's giving up names. So now we're coming a little bit closer to finding out what happened to Rasheem Carter because somebody's seen what happened to Rasheem.
Yeah, I have a feeling that 99% of those leads are just people taking advantage of this situation to get even with whomever they've had a fight with. Hopefully, there is a lead in there that might lead to the real killers. And I'll say this, man, whoever did this to him should get the death penalty. Absolutely. Horrendous, horrendous thing. If they did, I don't know if he didn't die from other causes. I can't tell you. It does look suspicious, and I might even go with he was probably murdered, okay? But I don't know who did this. And I have no idea if the stories about the trucks and all that had anything to do with it. But I'm telling you, a lot of people can get caught up in the crosshairs here unfairly. And people like him are going to be dead set on destroying them. And once again, they don't care if they're guilty. They just want to see a bunch of white people hanged for this because it represents a political victory. And that's what this is all about. It's a shame. I hope to get the true killers, but with people like this involved, it's going to be much harder. Like my video, subscribe to my channel.